Welcome to the Stronger Than Steel podcast with your host, Austin Davidson and John Keir, talking Steelers all the time. Now, here's Austin and John.
Hello, and welcome back to another edition of the Stronger Than Steel podcast. My name is John Keir, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Austin Davidson. Austin, how you doing, buddy? Welcome back to the show. We are just a week plus out from the NFL draft having concluded, and the top of the first round shook out at least, pretty similarly to the way that we thought it was going to, and the end of the first round saw the Steelers picking Naji Harris, and probably one of the least surprising picks of the entire first round this side of Trevor Lawrence. Now that the entire draft has been done for over a week, I'm kind of curious as to your thoughts on the Steelers haul and the draft in general. Has your opinion on the way it's gone changed at all?
No, I wasn't surprised coming out of it with how it was handled. I had a good feeling. I don't remember what podcast I said it on, but I was like, I have a feeling the Steelers are going to come out of this without taking a cornerback, and they basically did. They essentially didn't take a cornerback through the entire draft, and then also we basically knew they were going to take Naji Harris. They didn't hide it at all. There was no smoke and mirrors there. They took it, but I came out thinking about this draft class as a whole that this was a really bad draft class, and it's still just it's not even like about the players. It's just the positions they handled, the way they did it, how they did it, what they should have done instead. Likely, it came out as a really bad draft class for what the Steelers actually needed. I think I'm not exactly happy with all the players either, but that usually happens. I've been surprised before, but like the combination of everything, this was just a really bad draft class. And a lot of people have the Steelers draft class as the worst out of any NFL team this year, which could be a little bit of an exaggeration, but I think it is probably a bottom 5 draft class this year.
And I'll have to check to see what other experts say. I know that experts can often, people can often get stuck labeling draft classes as successes or failures too early in the process. I mean, none of these guys have played yet. But that being said, I think that there might be what we consider to be a fundamental problem in the approach that the Steelers took, and we can get into that in a little bit here. But when looking at this draft as a whole, do you think that there was at least a theme with what the Steelers were doing here?
I didn't think so. I think they kept their constant, though, that every year, for some reason, they like to double dip at one school. Not any school in particular, but they kept that going, where this year was Texas A&M, and it always changes, whatever school. Obviously, they did the Oklahoma State boys when they drafted James Washington and Mason Rudolph, and so on and so forth, anyone in between that. For some reason, I can't think of the other ones. I know Cameron Sutton from Tennessee was part of it. I forget who the other person we drafted from Tennessee was. Do you remember?
This would have been 2017?
I'm pretty sure it was Cameron Sutton. See, now I'm all messed up. Regardless, that's the
Sutton
only...
was from Tennessee. Sutton and... Josh Dobbs.
Ah, of course. Okay, I knew it. I was like, I know there was 2 people drafted from Tennessee. I just couldn't think of the second person. But yeah, so that theme is like the only theme that I saw keep up. I don't know if there was a theme to their picks other than they did try and improve their running game. Like that's what they're committed to. Their first 3 picks were about.
I'd agree with that for sure.
Improving the running game. Yeah.
All right. Well, why don't we start then with our reasoning for why we're not crazy about the first pick, which was Naji Harris. And to be clear, I think that I speak for both of us when I say that we like the player himself. In fact, I think that that's long been the stance we've taken, is that we don't hate the players per se. There's a lot of good running back. It's just that the difference between a great and average running back is so much less of a gap than, say, the best quarterback. You know what I mean? You've got a Patrick Mahomes versus a Ben Roethlisberger from this past season. So there's a much bigger difference. They just don't move the needle the way other positions do. And I know that you can make the argument that he wouldn't have been available for the Steelers' next pick, but I just struggle to stick with that when I think that it's possible to come up with other draft picks later on. And I know that there are rebuttals for that, and we can go over them later, but I just think that kind of sums up where we are in terms of that first pick.
Yeah, it's really tough because I'm really rooting for him. I mean, he's a high character guy, like high character. You obviously had the story about him driving 8 hours to see his boys at their pro day when he wasn't even participating in Alabama's pro day. Then you have him celebrating his draft at the homeless shelter where he spent some of his childhood, and he's a high character guy. And I would be rooting for him even if he wasn't putting on a Steelers uniform. But the unfortunate part of it is I'm rooting for my team, and I want them to make the best possible choice for a football player, not off the field. Off the field is great. I think that it's a very important thing. And again, Harris on the field is actually really good as well. But I think the analytics have to come into play a little bit more. Now, I feel like the Steelers are stuck in old ways. In a lot of regards, they're really, really stuck in. We're entering a more passing league now, and they're still. Obviously, the running game had to improve, but they're not relying on analytics as much as I would want them to. And I feel like at this point, you don't have to agree to everything, like the safeties, the nose tackles, the inside linebackers, those positions that other people say aren't important. But you have to get over the running back hump. I think the running back hump is very important, and it's going to separate the good and bad teams. And that's just the thing. The wins a running back is going to get you aren't very. They're not going to generate you a lot of wins even if you get the best one. And like John said, the difference between a top guy and the next guy isn't usually that big. But so I'm not mad that we picked Naji Harris. I would have not preferred it. I would have preferred Javonte Williams if we had to go to running back. And realistically, I would have rather just not. I would have rather traded back and see where the board was at there. But that's the problem with the Naji Harris pick. It's the running backs aren't going to change realistically, the Steelers' problem was more offensive line last year and run blocking more than the running back. James Conner averaged 4.3 yards per carry, and I know yards per carry is a bad stat after I just talked about analytics, but even then, I don't know if the successful run rate is fixed with Naji Harris. You know what I'm saying?
Well, actually, I can add on to that if you like. For instance, James Conner averaged 3 yards per carry after contact last year. So that's pretty good. I want to say Nick Chubb led. I saw somewhere Nick Chubb led the NFL in yards per carry after contact at 3.7 or 4. So at best, you're getting one more yard, which I know the Steelers learned last year that one yard could be more, huge, but. Is that really going to be the difference between this running game being the worst in the league and a top 5 rushing unit? And I just don't think it is. I think it's been proven quite often that a great offensive line can make even a below-average running back look really good, but I don't think the inverse is true. I don't think a great running back can make a below-average offensive line look good. I'm not saying it doesn't have an impact. It's just far more minimal. By comparison, when you inverse that equation.
Yeah, and I agree with that. It really is. I feel it's more. You should be drafting offensive linemen over a running back in most cases. Even look at the Chiefs last year. If the Chiefs drafted an offensive lineman instead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 32, we might be talking about a different Super Bowl champion. It literally might have been the difference. Because they could have had a guy run behind a really good offensive line, but their offensive line is what killed them in the end. It's what made them lose in the Super Bowl. Obviously, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is not a bad player. He did all right, I thought, in his first season. But it's just they should have gotten for a backup offensive lineman rather than a starting running back, because that's just really that's just really how bad running backs are to your team and how much more valuable it is to just focus on your offensive line. It's stuff like that. It's just, again, I don't want to, poop on the guy, because Naji Harris is a solid player, but it's just not, it shouldn't have been the pick. It really, really shouldn't have, but we knew it was going to happen for about 3 months now. So it wasn't the most upsetting thing in the world, because I was prepared, I had been prepared, but probably should have not been the pick.
So now that he has been the pick, what can we talk about what to expect from Harris going forward throughout his NFL career, what we can see from him for the next few seasons? I know you talked about him during the pre-draft process. I've gotten a chance to look at him as well, and like I said at the start of this, is that I like the player. There's a lot of things that I liked about Harris, and there's been a lot of comparisons to Le'Veon Bell, and while I wouldn't go exactly with that kind of comparison, I understand it. I think that he will be a really good running back.
Yeah, I could totally see him ending up as like a Derrick Henry type, you know? The thing is, after watching his tape, I was left mostly, it wasn't unimpressed, because I think he's still better than most players coming out, but like, I was underwhelmed by his ability in the passing game, both pass blocking and pass catching. I was told that he is the best pass catcher in the class, and he was the best pass blocker in the class. And while I think he might have the most experience in probably both those regards, I wasn't in love with it. I didn't see these flashy plays and this great blocking. I saw him throwing his body in there, which effort is good. Like if I see lack of effort, it turns me off from a player. And Najee Harris is absolutely the opposite of lack of effort, but it's just he's still not ready there. Like he's not ready in pass blocking. Like I was really disappointed. I will say I was disappointed in the pass blocking. Pass catching was all right. I was just expecting a little bit more, but I don't know. I think that was my problem with him. I just didn't feel like he was there. His running ability, great. I going to the other side of things where it's like the good stuff. I was told he was slower than a snail, and then watching his tape, like I really didn't feel like his speed was anything to be like concerned about. Like I thought his speed was more impressive than I was prepared for, and I was happy with it. And his ability to run over people and get yards after contact is really good. And I don't think I literally on all the tape I watched, I don't think I saw him get tackled backwards ever. Like he's always falling forward when he's getting tackled, and that was big. And obviously he's a big dude. And that's why I think like the Derrick Henry comparison is like warranted, is in the fact that he is so big that what's it called? That he kind of looks like Derrick Henry in that regard in the size department. But yeah, I think would be closer to Derrick Henry than Le'Veon Bell, because I think he's going to end up at not contributing as much in the passing game, even though he did a lot more at Alabama. We'll see though. I'm kind of hoping I'm wrong on that. Because I think he's a better pass catcher than Derrick Henry right off the bat, because Derrick Henry literally doesn't contribute in the passing game at all, and that's why a running back like him it's an interesting case when you're talking about it's really just like that kind of running back. It's weird. But so I'm hoping we get better than that with Najee Harris, which some people are probably listening like, you want better than Derrick Henry? And like, yes, yes I do. Because Derrick Henry, the most important thing for a running back, if he's going to get you wins, which they already don't, is that they have to contribute really well in the passing game. And Derrick Henry doesn't do that. At the end, he's a really good runner, but he's a good pass blocker, but he isn't a pass catcher. I need Najee Harris to be both a good pass blocker and a good pass catcher at this level. That's at least what I'm hoping for.
All right, let's back up here to the passing aspect, because a bell cow running back needs to be able to do everything. So Bell, by the way, I know that it was a little while ago, 9 years ago was his last college season, but he never had more than 35 catches in a single college season. So for whatever that's worth, Harris had 43 last season and only one drop. So I also would like to point out, I felt like the receiving aspect of the running back is actually kind of hard to project at this point, because it's not often that they're ever lined up outside. They're mostly running stuff out of the backfield. I saw that with pretty much every running back I looked at this year.
Yeah, that's a fair thing. The thing is, like, I'm not even talking, because I considered that, even when thinking, like, I just was unimpressed with his catching abilities and stuff, like, in general. Because, like, Anthony Mcfarland, right, last year, when he was coming out, they said he wasn't a good pass catcher, and when I watched his tape, I was able to say, no, that's actually not true. Anthony McFarland just didn't get the chances to be a pass catcher, but in the few times he did, he actually looked pretty solid. Harris is kind of the opposite. Harris got a lot of opportunities, which might have diluted it, and I just felt like, I don't know how he would be able to handle it at the NFL level. I was a little bit left unimpressed with what I was preparing for. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. And then beyond that, I want to, kind of further delve into the pass blocking aspect of running backs. In college, I got to be honest, over the years, I've had a hard time finding running backs that are actually really good at it. So while Harris isn't polished in this area, and I did see him get run over a few times, The only guy I looked at this year that was even like competent and I'd say like even good at it was Trey Sermon. So you can tell me from what you saw of your guys, but I think that the effort is the first thing to look for, and then it just takes like a year or two to get in the swing of things. Because if you remember, Le'Veon Bell and James Conner were not super well equipped to handle the blitzes as rookies, and then they got better at it as time went on.
Yeah, no, that's fair, because obviously in their first season, after their first season, they put on weight, too. I don't know if Naji Harris might be the first one to not do that. He's already pretty big, so I don't know if he's going to
Actually, they usually cut weight is what happens. They usually cut a little weight.
I had it backwards. But I'm sorry.
But that might be counterintuitive, but a lot of it is just getting in better shape for the long run. It's a lot of cutting fat, so they're keeping the muscle on. So it's not a bad thing per se.
Yeah.
But they usually, it takes time, because I remember James Conner had that really bad whiff against Jacksonville a few years ago, and he really wasn't used again very often until the next season, and then he was better there. So with that being said, I think that he has the first step, which is the one you need to be good at it, and then beyond that, I think is gravy. Beyond that, it's just gravy.
It's tough. It's tough for me because Javonte Williams is the best pass blocking running back I've ever looked at. Like in terms, so that was tough. It was a tough comparison, and that's why I feel bad. Like honestly, I really didn't think I would like any running back in this class. So like the top guys like Etienne, Williams, and Harris. So it's tough. Harris gets for me compared to Javonte Williams, who is an excellent pass catcher, an excellent pass blocker, and I honestly, other than Williams, I can't remember another pass blocker either, like a really good one. Like, the one Javian Hawkins this year would have been the only other one where I could have said something, where he had the effort and he was a lead blocker for his quarterback, who was kind of like Lamar Jackson style, who would run sometimes. But like he only had the effort. He wasn't really good at it because he was undersized. But yeah, so I guess it's just because I saw Javonte Williams that I'm kind of comparing Harris to his, where I'm like, well, Williams is there. Williams can pass block, and I trust it. But and he might be the only other running back in this class that was like ready to do so, at least in my eyes. So I guess that's what I'm comparing it to.
There's going to be problems if Harris isn't starting from day one, right? I mean, he should be maybe not Lev Bell all but like 3 offensive snaps, but he should be on the field for probably like 85 to 90% of the plays.
Oh my God, if we did what the Jaguars did and drafted a third down running back in the first round, it's really, the Jaguars saved the Steelers from having like the worst first round pick, basically. The Jaguars said, you want a running back? Hold my beer. Next pick, I want one too. And they grabbed Etienne. But
it's true. It was the worst pick, but they also augmented it with probably the best pick too.
Yeah, that's exactly. So it averages out. But I found that even crazier that he came out and said, yeah, he's our third down running back. We wanted a third down running back in the first round. So yeah, anyway, if the Steelers end up doing that, that's an absolute loss. I know we were talking about Harris and what stats we expect from him. How much scrimmage yards do you need him to have this year to say, like, all right, he did his job, like as a first round pick?
I think you're looking minimum 1,500, and then you want him to average, I think, over the course of his career closer to 1,800, right? I mean, I know that's a lot, but if they're going to be placing a more important aspect of the ground game, you have to think that he should be getting at least 1,200 on the ground, especially with the extra game now. So you're getting an extra game, plus you're getting, you're supposed to be running the ball more, and his ability as a receiver, he should be able to get you 400 this year. I could see him getting less than 1,500, but I think that should be the goal pretty much every year. And you're hoping, ideally, if he is the next second coming of Derrick Henry, that he's averaging around 2K. But I think 1,500 is a good place to start year one.
I think so too. I think 1,500 is what I'm shooting for, but he should almost immediately be an every down back. I mean, there's the running back room is pretty meh, like after him, for actually pretty bad. Like Anthony McFarland, Benny Snell, Jalen Samuels likely won't even end up on the team. So it's like, honestly, if Harris is worth his first round pick, he should be an immediately 3 down running back in this with this room around him. Honestly, I was talking about it to go on a tangent for a second, but the Steelers should really try like trading Snell if they could get anything for him. If they could get.
I don't think you can.
Probably not. I mean, you could market that. Hey, he had a 100-yard rushing game once. Give me
so
a 20.
did Jalen Samuels.
It's true. That is true. But I don't know. I'd see if the Falcons would be like, hey, Falcons, you didn't draft a running back, I see. You're going with a one-year wonder. Please give us a 2022 sixth, and we'll give you a 2022 seventh in Snell, please. But yeah, no. Snell, honestly, if it wasn't,
you might have to swap sevenths. You might have to swap sevenths just to have them take him off your hands. I don't know.
It's true.
I'm really hoping that last year was not, because his career arc is extremely disturbing in the trend of Jalen Samuels after what was, I think, a solid rookie year for him.
Yeah, I can't see. He's not going to further his career in Pittsburgh anymore. It's over. He is a worse Naji Harris.
He's a bit player
already. What?
I was going to say he's a bit player. He's Fitzgerald Toussaint on steroids, who, by the way, I loved. Fitzgerald Toussaint. Can we just appreciate that the 2015 Steelers had the best pass-blocking running backs in the league? All three of them were really good.
Yeah, that was pretty interesting. That was a funny year. 2015, man. No defense, all offense. All gas, no brakes. Literally.
That game, like that little stretch, I want to say like a month and a half stretch. They didn't even win all their games, but where they had Brown, Bryant, and Marcus Wheaton, and I think that was Ben Roethlisberger's best stretch, most dominant stretch of football outside of his 12 touchdowns in 2 weeks the previous years. I think that's the best I've ever seen him play.
Yeah, that was a wild time, man. Wild time.
Yeah.
Too bad we can't have that 2015 offense now. 2015 offense with 2020 defense or 2021 defense. Oh, that is a team winning a Super Bowl. 100%.
2015 with the 2016 defense, even.
Yeah, honestly, yeah, true. You just need a slightly better defense.
I'd like to point out that with our off-season content that we were thinking about doing, I was brainstorming talking about exactly why the Steelers haven't won the Super Bowl and how if everything had broken right, I think the Steelers might at best have one more Super Bowl or at least one more appearance, maybe two. So I won't get into it a ton right now, but after everything I looked at, I thought about this in depth. I'm pretty sure best case scenario, you win one more Super Bowl and you maybe get to one more.
I think 2015 there was definitely a chance. I mean, you look at it with Antonio Brown getting a concussion, right, against the Bengals. The Steelers still nearly beat the Peyton Manning-led Broncos the next week with all those injuries, with Antonio Brown not playing stuff. It was like basically a practice squad. Not really. That's a little bit of exaggeration, but I feel like that could have been a Super Bowl appearance here, possibly. I think we could have made it past the Broncos at least.
I don't know about New England the next week, though.
No, New England's tough.
That's not one of the teams I was thinking about. I was actually thinking about 16 and 17 the first 2 years that we did this.
Yeah, that's fair. That's also fair.
And I'll get into that more later this offseason, but that's something I was thinking about doing, so potentially be on the lookout for that. But with Harris, I'd also like to point out that I think that there can be something done with the offense to actually help make the offense more efficient and more analytics based, so it could actually in some ways justify the Harris pick even if the process is completely backwards. So what do we know the Steelers offense doesn't do with Big Ben? Austin,
quarterback sneak at all.
No quarterback sneaks. What else? There's no play action, almost nothing under center, right?
Yep.
So maybe with a renewed sense of importance and emphasis on the running game, we see more play action with Naji Harris, more things that utilize his skill sets. Excuse me. So more running plays, obviously, and more play action, more plays under center because that gets Harris going a little more. So I'm hoping that is what allows the Steelers to be a little more effective as an offense, because I don't believe that they improved enough in this draft to get further than they did last year. In fact, I see regression, which is why I think if Ben Roethlisberger turns back the clock a little bit, plays better, attacks more down the field, which you can do by using more play action, doing things like that, I think you can make up some of that ground. So in some ways, you can actually kind of justify the pick by changing the way your offense operates. And I'm not saying they will, but that is my hope.
Yeah, you're hoping with the new offensive coordinator they could at least change a few things. I'm hoping a little bit more play action is brought in with Matt Canada, but it's like I feel like it's something Ben Roethlisberger just doesn't want to run, and it's the same thing with the QB sneaks. It's like I think it's things that Ben Roethlisberger just doesn't want to do, and that they're listening to him. It'll be telling if they switch it up this year and actually incorporate it more. Because then I 100% believe Ben is holding the offense back by not allowing them to do that. But they should do it more with the new offensive coordinator. At least I am hoping. I'm in agreement with you.
So, I mean, I'm actually pretty excited for the preseason this year. We might actually get a good idea of what's going on.
Yeah.
But all in all, Harris, again, like the player, don't like the pick at that time. Yeah, I mean, that about covers it for Harris. I mean, he is big, he's strong, he's not slow. I mean, he's not blazing fast, but he's not slow either. Good player, don't like the place where he was picked.
Yeah.
So,
I think just to talk about the pick too is in a lot of our mock drafts we were trading back like from 24, and one of our favorites for both of those became the Falcons, going back to pick 40. And because in real life, in the mock draft, we got one of the three guys that we would have wanted, whether it be Landon Dickerson, Asante Samuel, or even Jonah Williams. So now you look at it in real life and say mock drafts don't follow that. In real life, if the Steelers traded back to 40, every single person would have been there. That was an option that would have made us happier. Would have made us happier if we took them at 24. So now you look at it that Asante Samuel was there, Landon Dickerson was there, Tevin Jenkins was there, and Javonte Williams was literally taken at that pick because the Broncos traded up to the Falcons pick to get him. So there were 4 players taken almost 15 picks backwards from where the Steelers took Naji Harris, and that's just for a team that had so many holes. It hurts seeing that. It really does, because all the guys we wanted could have gone right there instead.
alrighty, let's move on to pick number 2, which was Pat Freiermuth. So I know that I looked at him and have more probably to say than you do, but I was curious what you thought of him.
I think it was a good pick. I think that he does help the running game. He continues with his blocking because Eric Ebron just isn't that good of a blocker as a tight end. Which that's not nothing against him. He's a really good pass catcher, I feel like, or decent enough anyway. But Freiermuth adds that more blocking from the tight end position. I think it was a good pick and he's not only just that. He's not just a blocker. He's not just like not like Spaeth in that regard. He could actually contribute, or he should be able to contribute in red zone opportunities because that's where he excelled. He never had a drop in the red zone, at least I don't believe. What's it called? So overall, I was cool with that pick. I mean, 2 tight end sets aren't super common, but I hope they add them more. But I mean, when you have 3 good wide receivers, also it's tough. But overall I like the pick.
You can at least do it without having to manufacture it with an extra tackle. So you can now throw Ebron in the slot and put Freiermuth on the end. And I like that he doesn't have to take over and be the guy right away. He should realistically step in and be what Vance McDonald was this past year, with the expectation that he will continue to get better following next season.
Yeah, honestly, he probably should be an upgrade over Vance McDonald in the passing game. I kind of think Freiermuth is going to contribute more in the passing game this year than Vance McDonald did last year.
Maybe not by much though. There's a lot of not a lot of targets to go around,
Yeah,
especially if you think that they're going to be throwing the ball less next season. McDonald caught 15 passes. I think Freiermuth could probably finish with 20. I think is the ceiling.
Literally thinking 20. Yeah, 20 is. I think.
I'd look out for him in the red zone. I'd look out for him in the red zone. Look, when it comes to Freiermuth. When it comes to tight ends in general, it's a tough transition to the NFL level. I love T.J. Hawkinson. He was one of my favorite players I've ever looked at. Maybe my favorite player, period, that I've looked at. But it's still a transition, which is what's interesting about Kyle Pitts is that he is such a unique weapon that he, I think, was deserving of going in the first round, even if he's not just a tight end, even if he's more than that. But the traditional tight end, I think Freiermuth is the second best tight end in this class. He's got the size. And when we're talking about blocking potential, I will say right now, he's not a great blocker. And I don't think that's a bad thing, because it's similar to running backs, Austin. We've been talking about how hard it is for these guys to be really good blockers in college. And I think it's the same thing for tight ends. That they can do it, I just don't think you see it right away.
Nah, it's tough. I feel like tight end is one of the positions that still is one of the few positions teams let develop. Like, I feel like tight ends are the one that always do need to sit for a year before they break out, like George Kittle or someone else, you know?
Well, how many tight ends? I think there's only like 3 rookie tight ends that have ever had 1,000 receiving yards in a season. Like, it doesn't happen often, and that shouldn't be the expectation for him. Again, he should be. Really, the focus this year should be hitting the sleds, improving as a blocker, and we'll work with you as a receiver going forward. You know, like he should be basically a red zone weapon only for the time being.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair for him for his first year, and I think that's good first year expectations.
Now, I really liked what I saw from him on tape early on, and he was one of the first players I looked at. I don't want to say I soured on him. I still like him a lot. I just don't think his upside is quite as high as I might have originally thought. He should still be a pretty good player and should still be around for a long time, barring injury. But he's not going to be the dynamic game changer that a Kyle Pitts is going to be. He's going to be steady, maybe not even as big time of a player as Heath Miller, but I think that he should be a pretty good player, consistent for the next 5 to 8 to 10 years. And really his main issue, besides the fact that he's not a crazy good athlete, which means that he'll have problems separating, is that he does have 8 drops on 100 catchable targets in his career. And that's something that it seems like it's just a concentration issue. I'm not really worried about his hands, so that's good. But there's still some work there. But again, I don't mind the pick from the standpoint of the long-term building for the team. You needed a tight end to take over long-term. I think he's a good fit. But again, I don't think there should be high expectations for him this year. I think that it's a good long-term pick.
I think so. I think it's for the next generation of what the Steelers look like post Ben Roethlisberger. I think he's a guy that could, I feel like, be with the team for 10 years. Like, he could be like that type. Like, he could be the long time player. So I think he's good for the next generation of Steelers, whatever they look like.
Since Harris was the first pick, the third pick, Kendrick Green, would you agree with me that he's kind of like the swing vote in terms of if this draft is going to be considered a success or not?
I could agree to that. Yeah, because I mean, if he's a center for a long time, I mean, how much can we complain about this? If Freiermuth is a 10-year player and then Kendrick Green is also a 10-year player, how much can we really complain about this draft? I mean, that would be ideal. Not saying that's going to happen, but yeah, he's probably the swing.
All right, so why don't we get into him a little bit? So the long history of center for the Steelers over the past 50 years, Ray Mansfield, Mike Webster, Damani Dawson, Jeff Harnings, and now most recently Marquise Pouncey. Kendrick Green looking to be the next in line. So you didn't like the pick, as I recall, early on, right afterwards. Thought he was probably overdrafted a bit. That doesn't mean there aren't good qualities to him, if I read your thoughts on it correctly. Talk to me about why you thought he went a little earlier than he should have.
So he's an athletic freak. I cannot take that away from him. He tested so well with a relative athletic score of 9.83, which essentially puts together his combine stats and ranks him against previous draft classes like at the same position. That 9.83 was at guard, I should say, though. I'm pretty sure it jumps a little bit down if you compare it to center, like to 9.8, like literally 0.03 off, but still. So anyway, athletic freak. And that's a guy that you really like to develop. Like a guy that can do stuff like that just has all those kind of intangibles that you can't teach. That's a guy with a high ceiling that you really want to work on and develop. Now, I looked at him as a guard. And I felt like he was raw as a guard. And I didn't think he was going to be looked at as a center. He has started 4 times at center in his career. hardly played there. And then in 2019, I don't really count that 2019 game because the 2019 game, I gave him props because I thought that was incredible that he came in there, was an impromptu center, and you could tell like he was looking back. Every time he snapped the ball, he was looking back to make sure it was going in the right area. Like I couldn't even really count that tape for him because it was literally his first time at center, and he didn't even really know how to place the ball without looking backwards. So then going into 2020, I watched the Northwestern game, and he wasn't doing that anymore. You could tell that he was a little bit more polished at center, but he only got 3 starts there in 2020. So I was a little bit uncomfortable with him there, and I thought he was raw as a guard. Just looking at him as a guard, I felt like he ended up on the ground a lot. I felt like even though he had really strong arms, his base didn't match. I felt like if he didn't get a little bit of speed into his blocks, he was getting driven back. I thought he was a little bit slow on blitz pickup and stuff like that. So I ended up giving him a 6-round grade as a guard. I was like, because I thought he was raw, but I thought he'd be perfect for developmental purposes. Like, I viewed him like the equivalent of Jonathan Marshall from Arkansas. I did the same thing from John. It's basically what we did. Jonathan Marshall is a defensive tackle from Arkansas that is literally the same as Kendrick Green on the opposite side of the ball. Developmental guy, 6-round grade, same exact thing. A few people were a little bit higher on him, but he went in the 6th round. Kendrick Green did not. Honestly, if I graded Green as a center, I would have given him a 7th because he doesn't even have long arms. Like that, he has arms of a guard. Traditionally, your center has longer arms, otherwise they get moved to guard, and that's why Kendrick Green was mostly a guard. It's not like he has the shortest arms. I looked at Drake Jackson from Kentucky, and he had literal dinosaur arms. Like he had, I think, 31-inch arms, and that's ridiculously small for a center. And that's not where Green was at. It was just a little bit undersized in that department. But speaking of, like, he is undersized for a center. Like that, the only thing dragging his relative athletic score down was his size. Otherwise, he would have been a 10. Like he's at 6'2" and 305
short
pounds.
Arms too. He's got short arms. That's probably why. That's probably why you're looking at center, is because he just doesn't have long arms.
That actually doesn't go into the relative athletic score though. The arm length, surprisingly. Because I thought that too, but it's not. Regardless, I thought that was a huge reach going for him in the 3rd round. I think it was a really, really, really tough to play center. Because at first I didn't even process it. I wasn't putting it in my head. I was like, because I just didn't believe that we were putting him at center. I was like, we drafted a guard before we drafted a center, and then I was like, wait. And I saw everyone saying center, and I'm like, oh no. I was like, that's a bit of a stretch to play center. I don't know how he can come in. There were several centers on the board that the Steelers could have went with instead that I think could come in, be an immediate starter, and I'd be fine. I don't really see how Kendrick Green could come in and be an immediate starter. I don't know how you don't start B.J. Finney in front of him. I don't even know it, because the major complaint with J.C. Hassenauer, right, I feel like, is that he's undersized. Like, at center. It's really tough.
Yes, but he's also not nearly the athlete, though.
Absolutely not.
That's a difference between them.
Yeah, both Finney and Hassenauer aren't very good athletes at all. Because I remember going back and looking at B.J. Finney's, but the undersized thing doesn't change here. You just get a more athletic guy, and that's great. It's again higher ceiling, but like you're starting at the same. Like, I just don't see how he could really start game 1. He's gonna have to have a really good he's gonna have to really good showing in the preseason and training camp and stuff like that. But I just don't think he should be starting in basically year 1. But he's going to. I know he is. Like,
may I sort of pose a devil's advocate kind of thing here?
Of course.
Because I think it ties in. So we know that Kendrick Green is, from everything we've seen and everything that you have looked at him, suggests he is going to fit best in a zone blocking scheme, right?
Yeah.
And the Steelers haven't done that, at least not yet. Is there reason to think that with Matt Canada's style that there's going to be more of that? And with that, you don't need to worry as much about overwhelming someone. It's more about getting to a spot. Could that make picking him more about that offense that it's going to be? And we've seen teams that run zone blocking schemes give the Steelers fits on defense in the past, and they didn't even necessarily have great offensive lines. because a lot of it is just about getting to a spot. And that's why it's okay that he might not have to go up against a 350-pound nose tackle, because it's all about him just getting to a spot and welling off that guy, not necessarily blowing him off the ball, getting him out of the hole.
Yeah, the speed he possesses is definitely going to help with that. I think that's why you might go for that. You go for the more athletic guy, because he could get to the spot. He's going to get to the spot. I'm just not. See, that's the thing though. Moving around with him, like one of the worst things I saw from him, it was why I graded him so poorly, is that moving around and getting to like the next level on blocking was so tough for him. His hand placement was so bad. Okay. So, let me step back for a second. Before he even got to put his hands on guys, if he did, his pursuit angles were bad to get to the next level to block. And I know that's not just moving over to get to a spot to block, but I just don't trust him. Like, he seems to be, I don't know what to call it. Like, I feel like once he gets moving, he really struggles to get his hands set in the right area where he's going to win the block. He often doesn't get his hands in the right spot once he's moving. I don't know if he's just mistiming it or he's misjudging where the player's going to be in front of him, but he's just not very good at that. And so that's what concerns me. Even in the new scheme, like I viewed him as raw. Like this is it's not that I don't like Kendrick Green, and again, he could develop into something great. If he could get it all together, if the Steelers develop him perfectly, he's going to be great, because I mean his athletics is off the charts. I'm worried about now. The Steelers are in win. This is not a win now center to me. I think this is a guy that's probably going to suck year one. People are going to call. I'm not going to call him a bust after year one. I think it was just a little bit of reach. I think that it's a guy that's going to come back strong year two after a year of getting his ass kicked. And then be strong going forward. I just don't like the Steelers are in one more hurrah, last chance, let's go. And I don't think he's good for that, especially where they picked him. There's a ton of centers, including centers that went undrafted, that I would have taken in instead of him. That I would say, okay, this guy could probably start, because typically centers fall. Like we saw last year, Tyler Biadasz fell into the fourth round, and he was the best center in the nation, stuff like that. But so I think that there was other centers instead, and I know that you weren't as happy with it, but I literally probably would have preferred Patrick Morrissey start at center than Kendrick Green in his first year, which I don't.
You
think
mean Jimmy Morrissey?
Jimmy,
Really,
I keep calling him Patrick. I keep calling him Patrick Morrissey. I don't know why, but yeah, no, Jimmy Morrissey. I think it's like I don't know.
So bottom line is you're a lot more comfortable with this pick if Marquise Pouncey doesn't retire, is what I'm hearing you say.
Oh, yeah. I just don't think... I think he's a guy that needs to develop. I don't think he's a year one starter, and when he is going to be, because I almost guarantee he will, the Steelers didn't take him to not play. I just don't think he's going to be successful year one. He's going to have a really good training camp and stuff.
You are less trustworthy of their evaluation of him, i.e., they like him a lot more than everyone else, and we shouldn't trust them in the sense that we don't trust their evaluation as much as we would on a receiver, because even though the track record has been great, the time elapsed between each center is different than each receiver that's taken.
Yeah, I mean, the Steelers' history with centers is really good, so I'm hoping...
It's undeniable.
Yeah, it's the Steelers are probably the best team at drafting centers. So I hope I eat my words and I'm wrong. But again, I don't know. Like I said, I don't think Green is a bad player, and I don't think Green is an awful pick in general if you have a starting center or you had like one more year with him. Like if we took Kendrick Green last year, that would have been solid. I wanted to take Biadasz last year, and because I already foresaw what was going to happen. Instead, we took Anthony Mcfarland in the fourth round, but. Regardless, and you see how much he's contributing and how much we would have need. Just going back, just never running backs suck. Running backs ruin everything. But anyway,
we have to get it in there again. You have to.
I had to throw it in there. But so like Kendrick, because I would have had a completely different outlook on Green. I still would have said that was a bit of a reach, but I understand it because I was like, okay, he's got a year to develop. he's really an athletic freak and stuff. Kendrick Green didn't come out of last year's class, though. He came out of this year's class, and he doesn't have time to develop unless the Steelers want to start B.J. Finney, because J.C. Hassenauer is likely not even making the team this year. We'll see. I mean, we're really just going to see with that, but I don't know. I think Kendrick Green in the long run will end up as a really good center. I'm literally saying I think he's just going to have a really, really bad first year where he gets his ass kicked. He gets the ropes of learning the NFL. Like, welcome to the NFL, kiddo. And then going forward, he should be good. It's just, again, the idea that the Steelers are in it for one last hurrah, I don't understand this pick at so high.
So, bottom line, what do you think his ceiling is? Do you think he's at least a multiple Pro Bowler at best?
Oh, yeah. Oh, my. The guys with high athleticism are always going to be like guys that have, I'm sorry. Getting my thoughts together just so I could actually spit it out, is that the guys that can put the high athleticism with great play end up as Hall of Famers. Like, his ceiling can be that high, literally. But I don't know. His floor is also extremely low because he's starting off raw. If he doesn't ever develop, if the Steelers were wrong in their evaluation where he's like, well, they're like, we can work with him. We can make it work. We can fix his hand placement. We could work through his undersized abilities and make him perfect his areas where he's strong. If they can be successful in that, again, his ceiling is he could be a Hall of Famer. But he's just starting with a lower floor is the thing, and that just goes back to me saying that in year one I don't think he's going to be successful because he has such a low floor that he's starting from, that he's got a lot to learn getting to the NFL level, and then on top of it he's undersized. So it's tough for him. It's tough for him to put it all together in year one. I will give him major props if he's able to put it together this year and be a just average center. Because that's not what I'm expecting from him. I'm expecting him to be bad if he starts. Straight up.
Do you think there's any chance in a month from now, we find out that Maurkice Pouncey's coming out of retirement? And would you even want that?
I doubt it. Seeing that picture of him, he is lost.
Skinny man.
He is.
My God, how do they always lose so much weight that quickly? I mean, I know how, but it's just amazing every time.
Yeah, he does not look like an offensive lineman anymore. It's always crazy, like seeing him, Joe Thomas. Who was the others? Who was the Steelers?
Alan Faneca?
Not even him. Who was the one that wanted to come back as a tight end? He wasn't a very...
Oh, I don't know. Mike Adams, maybe?
Oh, I think it was Mike Adams, yes.
Which is completely ironic because I literally wasn't even sure that it was Mike Adams, and I was just thinking about Mike Adams the other day.
Yeah, because I remember seeing a picture of him, and he's like, I want to come back as a tight end. It never worked. He didn't actually... he didn't know Urban Meyer. But,
Yeah.
Oh
my God. Let's not even talk about that today.
Okay. Sorry, I had to make that joke. But, they all lose weight so fast. And they, it literally takes no time at all. But, yeah, so if Maurkice Pouncey comes back, he's coming back as a tight end.
Yeah, so, I mean, first 2 days, I liked the Freiermuth pick. I'm indifferent on the Green pick, and I didn't like the Harris pick. So, for a draft that's supposed to be about right now, I really feel like a lot of it is for quarterback to be drafted later, more than it is Ben Roethlisberger's last hurrah.
It did. It is true. It's kind of the theme of this draft. They said that it wasn't, but realistically, they came out of this draft looking with not many holes covered. For this year.
If it makes you feel better, Kendrick Green's highest graded game last season came at center against Minnesota. He scored an 89.9, which is considered elite.
What was his Northwestern score? It had to be the worst of his season, right?
Northwestern, yes, was the worst game of his season. He scored a 63.2, which is considered maybe slightly below average.
Yeah, that was one of the games I watched, and it just wasn't. Maybe that's influencing it. Maybe it's because I didn't watch enough tape on him, because he was obviously playing at Illinois. He didn't have the most tape, so I didn't really get to see the most of him. So maybe it's just I saw his worst game, and that's what I focused in on, and that's why I think that his floor is lower than others expected. That's the thing, though. even going back. So I've been using a new website called the NFL Mock Draft Database. It's really nice because it puts all mock drafts together from all analysts that anywhere you could find and where they project them to go. And almost obviously a lot of people are wrong, but usually there's at least a few people that get it right in some regard. But they had them going between rounds 4 and 6, like mostly. Like it's just mostly 4 and 5. Now I'm forgetting the point of me saying where I thought he was going to go, but shoot, I lost my train of thought. I was talking about that.
I was saying all along though, I thought this draft you were going to see more guys taken that were completely off the board than before because of the nature of this year's draft and COVID.
It is true. I mean, all the opt-out players really fell. Do you have anything? I'm just curious because I actually have something to say. Do you have anything to say about this draft class as a whole? Any guys you looked at? Any surprises from outside the Steelers, like from guys that got taken?
Oh, you mean like what have I heard from people outside?
No, just in general. Like, was there a player that you looked at that you thought should have went higher? A player that you looked at that you thought went too high in real life?
Oh, you mean in general or just the Steelers?
Just in general.
I thought Penei Sewell dropping to the Lions was insane. That was the best value pick in the draft, in my opinion.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty far drop too. It didn't really make sense. I still think the Bengals made a mistake by going Jamar Chase, but I wonder how much Joe Burrow's influence had on
Okay,
that.
so I was talking to Will about this, and we had kind of I wouldn't say heated discussion or anything, but my whole opinion on this the whole time has been I don't think the Bengals could have made a wrong choice either way. Now, I mean that based on just that pick. The picks afterwards, like I want to say the Bengals drafted a guy who was like off everyone's board in the second round. I don't agree with that. If that was the case, they should have. Who did they take? What's the guy's name?
Took some offensive tackle.
Jackson Carman from Clemson. If I'm not mistaken, this guy was not expected to be like taken that early. I need to. Here we go. Bengals.
No, there's Tevin Jenkins and Samuel Cosby
Carman
still on the board.
Yeah. Okay. So it wasn't a horrible pick. He just went a little bit earlier than other guys. So he was probably projected like a round later. Okay. So here was what I was thinking. They have Riley Reif and. What's the tackle's name? Jonah Williams. So, yes, I know Riley Reif isn't a great player. Jesse laughed at me when I mentioned they signed him. Yeah, he might not be great, but he's also not Bobby Hart. He's much better than Bobby Hart. So I don't care what you say. Bobby Hart's. Yeah. So adding Penei Sewell, none of those guys are natural guards. If you draft Penei Sewell, you have to move one of those three guys to guard because your interior is the big problem on that line, not so much the tackles. Again, it's not a bad thing to do. It's just that drafting Penei Sewell, you're probably going to have to move him to guard. He's not going to be at his best there. You're not really going to help your team that much. You're still going to have two glaring weaknesses on the interior, whereas adding Jamar Chase gives Joe Burrow a legit deep receiving core now. And again, the offense. I'm not going to act like the offensive line isn't a problem. I'm just saying you could have finished that part of the receiver room, and they did. And then they could have addressed interior later in the draft, and they still drafted a tackle. So I don't get that. But that was my whole thing, was they couldn't have made that first pick incorrectly.
Yeah, no, Jamar Chase is a really good player. But I don't know. I still think that they're more plentiful at wide receiver with T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. So, like, to me, T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd is way better than Jonah Williams and Riley Reif. And Jonah Williams is actually pretty good. But regardless, I feel like...
Sorry, go ahead.
I feel like you could have upgraded tackle. And I know you need 3 wide receivers rather than 2 tackles, but still.
I was just going to say that's one of those PFF commandments, more weapons at receiver. And the whole theory was go back to the Chiefs. Instead of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, what if they draft...
They get T. Higgins.
Oh, crap. What if they draft T. Higgins?
T. Higgins.
And then you add T. Higgins to Tyreek Hill.
Because those are the guys that went right afterwards.
Yeah, what if you draft T. Higgins and then you've got Mecole Hardman, You have Demarcus Robinson, Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, and you have that receiver. No one can cover that. No one could cover them this year anyways, but then you add another one. That's kind of the thought process behind it. It's no longer you have two starting receivers and then the next two are just backups that will play sometimes. Now it's you can legitimately have 4 legitimate starting receivers because they're always on the field. So that's how it's changed over the last 20 years. So interesting kind of development. What do you think about Trey Lance at number 3? Because I thought for a while it was Mac Jones, but really it had gotten to the point where I was like, the Niners could take any quarterback here that wasn't Zach Wilson or Trevor Lawrence, and I wouldn't have been surprised, and I wasn't.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know much about Trey Lance. Like, I know he went to North Dakota State University.
No one knows much.
Like,
no one knows much. He's barely played.
Like, yeah, like I read something that like he's only had like 400 passes thrown or less in his college career because he only started for like a year and a half or something like that, and that concerns me. But for them anyway, and they gave up a lot to move up to that. So I don't know. I don't really have many thoughts on him, honestly. I really did think that.
I think he was a starter for 1 year as a senior in high school too. So like, he has played very little quarterback.
Yes, I think I remember hearing that on draft day because he said when he was picking colleges wanted him to change his position. And he said, no, I'm a quarterback. So he ended up at North Dakota State University and didn't even get to crack the roster for quite a few, at least a little bit. So, yeah, I don't know. I didn't really have many thoughts on Trey Lance.
Did you think it was funny that for the second year in a row, the less complete receiver went earlier than the more complete receiver because he was faster? From the same team, I'm referring to Henry Ruggs over Jerry Jeudy and Jalen Waddle over Devontae Smith back-to-back years.
Teams never learn. I don't know what it is where you don't do high athletic bad play. Well, not that Jalen Waddle's bad, but you don't do high athletic bad play in round 1. You always go for the guy that is the better player with not as athletic. It's the Antoine Winfield or the Asante Samuel effect. Like, these guys, despite not having the greatest athleticism, are not picked. They're I don't know who said it. I think it might have been Ryan Clark or Terrell Owens. It's like round 2 is where you get the true guys, like the guys that actually play football. Like that they don't have the athletic talent. They're not being drafted for that. They're being drafted because they could play, and that's exactly like Asante Samuel. I guess that's the jury's out. He hasn't played a single snap. He could absolutely suck, but I actually think he's going to be good. And then Antoine Winfield. It's like they're guys that went in the second round that probably shouldn't have because they're absolute ball players. And then you have a guy like Jalen Waddle going over Devontae Smith, where Devontae Smith he's a player. Like he's undersized and he's absolutely destroying at his level. Like completely it's ridiculous how small he was for a 6-foot guy, but he is showing that he can play, and they're like, he's gonna get destroyed. Well, have you seen it happen yet? Like I don't know. And they're like, but Jalen Waddle might do something. He has return ability, and I'm like, all right, like you do you. Teams are really bad at evaluating wide receiver. They need either the Steelers or the next best thing, the Steelers scouts or the next best thing, me, because wide receivers are my bread and butter.
How about the Eagles finally drafting the right one?
Oh, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe my eyes. I honestly think that it might have made Devontae Smith be a bust already. I don't know if they.
Let's hope not.
I didn't watch Devontae Smith tape. It's just a guy like last year when I was watching like Florida games, and last year when I was watching Alabama games, is a guy that's like, wow, he's probably better than Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs, and I'm going to say that he will be the next level. I didn't watch his tape completely, so I guess I can't say that. But regardless, him being taken by the Eagles might ruin it. Might ruin his career. We'll see. What's it called? Thinking of wide receivers though. I really thought they were going to take Sage Surratt. Surratt seemed like their alley. Also, that is really what I wanted to address, because I know it sucks, because there's things I'm wrong about. Like, okay, so before I get to Sage Surratt, let me talk about Brevin Jordan, because I was wrong about Brevin Jordan. Brevin Jordan was a guy that's been falling down draft boards, like, for the past, 2 months leading up to the draft, and I'm like, I watched him late. I watched him, the night before the draft, or 2 nights before the draft, something like that. And I was like, why is this guy falling? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. He's a second rounder. He fell all the way to the 5th. I have no idea why. I didn't believe it. I just still don't understand why. I thought there might have been an injury or something there, like, something like that. Regardless, I didn't know. But now going into Sage Surratt, I watched his tape. I was like, this guy's an undrafted free agent, and analysts had him going in like the 4th round. I'm like, bro, this guy is a guaranteed undrafted free agent. He is going to be drafted by the Eagles because he's so bad, and he went undrafted. And so I wanted to toot my own horn because there was not a single person that had him as undrafted. And what's crazy, I have no idea what was happening like a year ago, but Sage Surratt a year ago on the mock draft database was being picked as a first rounder. I have no idea, and it wasn't like one guy. It was like a handful of people saying this guy is a 2020 first rounder before he opted out. I have no idea what they were on. Absolutely nutty. Absolutely nutty.
All right. Speaking of nutty, the Broncos deciding that Drew Lock is still good enough to be their quarterback, or Teddy Bridgewater. They took probably one of the best players they could have taken that wouldn't have been a quarterback in Patrick Surtain, but they still had Justin Fields and Mac Jones on the board. I think that's a critical failure.
It's tough. I mean, what if Fields and Jones both bust, and what if they had graded them that way? I mean, they're the same team that said Paxton Lynch is a first rounder, but
I mean, that's true. That was also a number of years ago, and a lot of things with quarterbacks is where do they go? What's the situation they end up in? I'm not super keen on the Bears situation, but I know the Patriots offense, even with their 2 tights now, probably not the greatest offense. That Broncos offense, you stroll in there, that's a nice-looking offense. You got Cortland Sutton, KJ Hamler, Tim Patrick, Noah Fant, Albert O, and I'm missing Jerry Jeudy. That's a pretty nice offense that's young and full of players that should be getting better. I think that if they picked up a quarterback, that could have been a really scary offense in the years to come. But I don't trust Drew Lock at all.
It's tough. I mean, for me, if Fields is even like average or just slightly above average, or either of them are, it's going to be a failure. But to me, I think that Surtain was a guy you couldn't pass up. I'm going to say it with my chest. I've been avoiding it. Surtain is a guaranteed All-Pro. I guarantee it. I'd put money down on it right now before he's played a snap. And I don't even like to say players will be Pro Bowlers, and that's what I've been saying for Surtain, is that he's going to be a Pro Bowler at like some point. But I can almost guarantee you Surtain is going to be an All-Pro. And if that is true, if their evaluation matches my evaluation, you can't an All-Pro cornerback, you can't pass that up. So. But I had to say that with my chest. So I think Surtain was the best defensive player in this entire draft, 100%. And that's really tough to pass up when you also need corners as a team.
Besides J.C. Horn, the league thought that he was the best defensive player. And how about that too? That is a really deep secondary now.
Yeah, so I give them a pass, and also, as a whole, I would like to trade the Steelers draft class for the Broncos draft class. The Broncos, every year, I don't know how, they take at least 2 players that I fall in love with. And they did it again this year, and you could argue 3, because I didn't really know much about Quinn Miners, but they also got Quinn Miners, and I was just like, when it came to the 3rd round, I was like, Quinn Miners or break, Quinn Miners or nothing, let's go, and then we chose Kendrick Green. But regardless, they got Patrick Surtain, Javonte Williams, and Quinn Miners. Oh, that would have been amazing. I would have loved that draft class. Obviously, they picked a lot earlier than we did, but regardless, I want their draft
Other
class.
Interesting first rounders like Caleb Farley that you thought might have been interesting.
Yeah, no. I wasn't really surprised this year, other than like Alex Leatherwood.
Alex Leatherwood, yeah, yep.
The Raiders
what's
got
funny
the
there?
first round guy in the 2nd round. You know?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you flip their first 2 picks, it's probably not much of an issue. They probably could have traded back. Oh, I also think Christian Barmore going to the Patriots seems like a really good move for them.
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. I forgot about Barmore actually sneaking back into the first round. But, I wanted to ask you, what did you think about Ardarius Washington? Like thinking of Trevon Moehrig.
What about Washington?
The
Was
fact
he
that he went
was he an undrafted free agent?
He was an undrafted free agent. That's what I meant. Yeah.
I was a little surprised to see that. I guess the size concern is enough of a problem. I mean, he's like Tutu Atwell small. Maybe not quite that small, but he is small.
Sub 150 pounds.
They said his comparison was Mike Hilton. I would have thought that he'd have been worth the draft, a draft pick on day 3. I was pretty surprised about that. Apparently, the guy's name, by the way, is pronounced Merrig, which is frustrating. Very frustrating considering the spelling.
I gotta learn Oweh's name, Odafe, because he made it a point. He's gonna be in the AFC North, and he said, "I'm going by my name now." Obviously, I'm referring to formerly known as Jason Oweh.
The Ravens' second first-round pick, or first one. I can't remember. How about the Texans using their first pick on a freaking quarterback that sucks? I think Mond went first of those 3 because he went to the Vikings. You know what? Then I think Mills went before Mond. Because Mills was an early 3rd-round pick. They were back-to-back. Sorry. They were back-to-back, so it was Mond and then Mills pick 2 and 3 in the 3rd round. Then Jalen Mayfield. Speaking of little experience, he has 11 career starts. This guy failed. No, Davis Mills. Davis Mills failed in the Mike Leach offense. That's like unheard of in college. God. They went 4-12 with elite quarterback play last season, which is like almost impossible. Oh, hold up. I'm on NFL.com. Packers to try out Ben Kurt and Chad Kelly, 2 former quarterbacks that we've looked at. Oh, the Packers. I think we save it. I think we should save it for next episode. We're running past an hour now for what was supposed to be a fast one. And we somehow didn't get the punter. I'm seeing this. Eric Fisher signed a 1-year deal with the Colts. Any closing thoughts here before we wrap up? We'll be back next time talking about the second half, or rather day 3 prospects, which there's more than double the ones that we looked at here today. And we'll be talking Steelers schedule release and Packers nonsense and anything else. Indeed. Alrighty, well, in the meantime, thank you as always for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. Feel free to email us with questions, concerns, or feedback at strongerthansteelpodcast@gmail.com. And you can find all of our social media linked in the description below. Until next time, thank you as always for listening to the Stronger Than Steel podcast. And Austin, thank you for joining me. Have a terrific and safe day or night wherever you're listening. Thank you.
You have been listening to Stronger Than Steel podcast. Thank you for joining us today, and don't forget to check out our website listed in the description below.